so much for being on Dying to Live this week. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm so happy to have this chance to talk with you and share this space with you. I've been loving all of the interviews that you're doing and all of the journeys that you've gone on. So I'm happy to go on one with you.
Oh, well, that's a flip of the roles because usually you're taking me on journeys. So that's pretty awesome. Thank you.
Yes, I am a professional journey taker, but part of that is that I'm always on a journey too. So I'm a professional journey goer as well.
Yes, you are always game. That is one of the fun things about you is just your raw love of adventure, and no matter what that looks like, and seeing that adventure through other people's experience, which I know you get a lot out of, is really awesome to experience as the journeyer as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say I'm always game for adventure. But not always game for socialization. I like my I that's my like weak spot, I'm like, if you ask me if I want to go to Peru and explore an area I've never been, I'll probably say yes with no planning. But if you ask me to dinner, I'm like, ooh, I gotta think about that. So can I text you back later? And then I probably won't. So fun parts of saying yes and being game for everything.
So would you say you're an introvert or an extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert?
I am an introverted extrovert. So the best thing and I totally take this from some meme that I saw because it's not my thought, it's not my original thought, but it's that like I'm either a Buddhist monk and I don't speak for a year, or I have 10,000 words a minute and I can't get them all out quick enough or enthusiastically enough. I'm like a border collie or like a cat sleeping on the bed. Like those are the only two modes I have. So I'm both.
I like those are two great options. I
Yeah.
definitely identify that as well. I thought I was really more extroverted actually until this pandemic, and like settling
Mm-hmm.
into this time I realized actually I don't think I took enough time to be introverted, and I think actually that's where I'm most comfortable now.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I just think you encapsulated perfectly the idea that we aren't a thing. We are dynamically evolving continuously in every I mean, whoever I was at 5 years old is definitely not who I am now. And so if I was marked as an extrovert then, I've gone through all the stages of life of introverted moments, extroverted moments, combos, the balance of it all. I think, yeah, it's all just such an evolution.
I mean, if we're lucky, right? Gosh, yes. Who
Yes.
wants to be the same, maybe I think some people do actually, but I'm not one of those people, and you are not either.
No, 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 no. When I was 15 and sort of like spreading my wings out into the world by myself, independently for the first time, fully accountable for my own container in a way that I hadn't been before, I got a tattoo on because I was 15, and I rebellious. But I got a tattoo, and it is a Hindu symbol that sort of represents change. And when I was 15, my rationale, I thought it was really beautiful. It was something that a friend had given me that she said reminded her of me. And I really liked it because I thought very deeply that the only thing that was permanent was change. And that was like the only thing that I could truly identify as a value of mine, was that like stagnation is death. And I just want to live in a change cycle all the time. I want fresh, new, challenge, growth, changing. And I felt that then. And I will say for sure, I still feel that now. And the tattoo I don't see because it's on my back, so I still love it. that's my advice to kids about tattoos. It's like put it in a spot you don't have to see it every day, so you won't get sick of it after so many years.
You gave me that advice for my first tattoo, and I took it, and it's on my back. And I got a massage actually for some like neck and head pain the other day, and the therapist said, "Oh, I really like that on your back," and it's like, "Oh, I forgot it was back there."
Same all the time. Yeah, it's fun though, like, I mean, I think it's very metaphorical about well, to me, it speaks to who I am, that I think that there's like these layers of who I am that I prefer not to look at all the time, and that I like, but I like to know they're there and they're important and they're a full part of who I am. But I don't want to like stare them down every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the main roadblocks to, doing, even just being still with ourselves, is that if we allow those things to come up, we're not really going to like what we see. But those things are part of us, we're both the light and the dark. And all things can be true, and all of those things are lovable and acceptable, and just part of us as humans. So I know that you've done just a mass amount of work in both of those areas. And, what would you share with people about, I guess, sitting with that fear or working with those parts that you're a little bit afraid to look at?
I mean, I think that it's easier in my growth and maturity, and I don't know, like my 22-year-old self who had lived a lot of life, like comparatively a lot more than other 22-year-olds that I was surrounded by. I lived a very like different type of experience, and so I felt very mature. But the truth I think now is that there's this niceness that I view as maturity, which is this willingness to be okay with the flaws, and to like not to attach my value to my perfection, and that like I truly feel in my deepest self, and I have always felt that like the ability to grow and the ability to evolve and the ability to learn is something to covet. But then there's been this space, I think, especially in my younger self, that's very critical of that, and that says, oh, if you need to grow, then you failed, then you weren't perfect, you didn't understand everything from the get-go. And it's interesting because I, like practically in my job, I experience this all the time with people in the mountains who especially women. I mean, I see it more with women, but I actually will say that maybe not especially with women. I think it tends to be more overt. It's present with men as well, for sure. It's just a little more hidden. But this idea that if you don't know how to do something that you have never done before, somehow you're bad.
Yes.
And that like, and yeah, and that applies so deeply to like a practical skill, like, using an ice axe or walking in crampons. But then I think that about how we view ourselves. And it's like, if you don't, like that part of you, that's bad, that you just like hide it, get rid of it, or just don't pay attention, move away from it. And I think as I've grown, I've started to say like, okay, what if we move towards it? What if I like really nestle myself into that part that I don't love, and see what really lives there, and just explore that really uncomfortable room.
Yeah. I love that so much. For me, so much of the stuff always and I don't purposely try to take it back there, but it so naturally just comes back to the idea of also how in this culture we view death. We hide it away. We hide aging away, because at the end of aging is death. We never sit with it, make friends with it even. And so then all of those things that also signal change and evolution, the little things that we might want to evolve in ourselves or even kill off in ourselves, that it adds to the fear, because we're constantly avoiding it and hiding it away. And so I'm with you, like, to have the courage to just bring that out into the light a little bit more, and just even gently spend some time with those things that we're afraid to look at within ourselves, can make such a huge difference to our overall peace and fulfillment and comfort level as people.
Yeah, and I think that that's exactly 100% what it has been for me in my life. My personal experience has been one of discomfort, and really sitting in discomfort intentionally, and like you might say, choosing to be and do things in very uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable ways. And part of that physical practice for me has been about knowing that I'm going to survive, knowing that discomfort and danger are not the same thing, and knowing that there's a space between those two things. And I think it's a true more true maybe even of emotional discomfort and emotional danger, where you feel unsafe and you feel exposed and at risk, and to not flee and to not, I always think about ways that I can sort of like cultivate my own resilience and my cultivate my relationship with discomfort. And like from a very dorky sense of that, it's like if I'm hungry right now and I can just walk to the kitchen and get a snack, how about no? How about I just wait for like half an hour? Or, because there's so many food issues, I think for people, I think that's a risky one to start with. But like, it's pretty hot in here. Let's just take off my sweater. How about no? How about just be hot and sit here and be like, I want to not be hot. It's within my power to not be hot, but I'm going to choose to be hot, and I'm going to sit in this hotness, and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to get through it. And then I'm going to relieve the discomfort, and I'm going to just feel that too. And I think like I really have had a practice of knowing and becoming intimate with discomfort in my life for a really long time. And anytime I'm having to be faced with something that feels insurmountable, I really like up the ante on my discomfort practice. And I do things that I really don't want to do, because I just think that like swallowing sometimes that feeling of discomfort and then like feeling it digest just gives you so many tools to be able to deal with, because there's two kinds of discomfort, I think, in life: the ones we choose and we put ourselves in, and the ones that choose us that we didn't choose. And it's so much better feeling in life, I think, to have chosen discomfort here and there, and to know where your survival line is, where your safety line is.
Yes, I love how you said that. I have like 3 thought bubbles up here of where I want to go with it.
Share them all.
One is I've never thought of a practice, like a discomfort practice like that, like a purposeful, mindful, in the moment type of practice. But that's so valuable to then also, have a chat with yourself when it's over, that like, look, I was hot. I could sit in that hotness. I didn't die. I'm good. It builds up that resilience. I'm going to try that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with someone yesterday who needed to ask for something for their own health and well-being. And their major fear is about disappointing other people. And this ask could definitely have been disappointing to me. And it was really interesting because they got done asking, and then I got done saying, yes, of course, if this is what you need. And then I was like, and how interesting that you made that ask, I answered, and you didn't die. You're still here. Things are fine. We're still having a conversation. Nothing's changed. And they were like, right. So another practice of sitting in discomfort.
Well, and just as a pause, and you maybe can bookmark your third thought bubble, but so I just have this really vivid memory of my dad when I was growing up saying always, for everything, doesn't hurt to ask. What do you have to lose by asking for anything? And like the answer was like 99% of the time no, but he would always just say, and he might give me this disappointing answer, and he'd always end it with like, doesn't hurt to ask. And I just remember this feeling of like, as a kid, that disappointment and not getting your way, maybe as an adult too, is like such a devastating and all-encompassing feeling that sometimes to ask for what you need and risk being told, no, you cannot have what you need, you're feeling disappointment, you're feeling powerless, you're feeling, in that example, I am a child in that environment, but as an adult, when you're asking for what you need, the fear of being in a child-parent dynamic that may not have felt safe always. And so that it's like, to push through discomfort and to think about like, what is the consequences if it goes as bad as it can go? What's the fear on the other side of that? And I think so often, I'm an untrained amateur psychologist, but it is a loss of control, right? Like on some level, however that manifests as your fear, it's this losing of control of a situation you may have felt like you were a willing and controlling member of. And that, I think, is truly like what resilience practice is mostly about, is to find a way to exist within the flow and not try to control where it's going, and be okay with that it might not take you where you think it's going to go, but that you're just in the flow, and that you're going to end up somewhere. And I just think that, like, gosh, I mean, if a global pandemic can't teach us, I mean, because everybody now speaks that language. Like, this is a foreign thought for a lot of people, to a big room I might be talking to, about like cultivating resilience, and when things aren't going to go the way you want and you can do absolutely nothing about it, and then it keeps not going how you want, and it just, as bad as it gets, then it just gets worse, and then you lose more. And that feels very abstract, I think, before this pandemic, but everybody, I think, can relate to that on some level. And so this idea now of like practice, like we all benefit from practicing discomfort practices that bolster our resilience and help us to detach from the need to be in control.
Yeah.
That's just what I think.
Yeah. Well said. And to the whole point you made about, you know, asking for what you want or for what you need. And, you know, there's so much more negative that could come up for you through not asking. So really, what do you have to lose, right? You're doing yourself the biggest service that you can. You're being in service to yourself when you ask for what you need and also what you want. And that also teaches resilience and confidence and a whole host of other things that are beneficial. So like all of these things are interwoven. Very hard in everyday practice, like making it sound so easy right now, but it takes a lot of practice to sit within that.
Yeah, and that's why I think really practical, small ways of practicing your own power over your own mind is where you gain a lot of power in your life, you know, where you become, where that also happens to be an area where you can cultivate the confidence to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. I just don't think we're like, I don't think everybody is naturally born or has matured in an environment that has told them, hey, speaking your power is safe. and you will benefit. Yeah, and you will benefit from it. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities where you're shown that is not the case. And so to just reorient your own internal self to like knowing that you're still safe and that you're safe when you're uncomfortable, I think is just really a rich, fun thing to do.
Super fun. I mean, I'm still learning.
We can all do it just right now, you know, like open up the window, turn down the thermostat, just shiver in your chair for a few minutes.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
I really, something that you said earlier resonated too, when you were talking about knowing the difference between discomfort and danger.
Danger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, okay, so I'm going to take us back a little bit. So you and I have known each other for a long time, and we met through Eddie Bauer, where we were both working, where we still work now together. And then I've been on some outdoor adventures with you as well. And when you said that, what struck me is the difference between going on a guided adventure with you and some other folks that I have experienced, where with you, there is this extreme sense of safety, groundedness. You hold that container very, very well. And now I'm thinking, well, in addition to just your vast expertise and experience, it's that mindset that contributes to that. Because as you're there in this dangerous situation with people who have not experienced that or have limited experience in that, you know, being centered in yourself and the fact that this is discomfort but not danger, energetically spreads that comfort to the people that are with you as well, and makes the whole experience that much more enjoyable.
Well, so it's really interesting, and I want to share a story from my perspective, I guess, that maybe would shed some light on that feeling, because I really appreciate that is your perspective on experiences that we've had together. And to clarify, like, we've climbed Mount Rainier together. That's a very big and serious mountain. We've had other adventures of all sorts of different kinds, truly. But I think that, so, you know, there was a winter guide meeting in the earliest days of Eddie Bauer, and I didn't know you, and I didn't know you well. I knew you were just a person amongst many that I didn't yet know well. And you were a new mother and sort of like finding yourself in that space, I think, and like where your life was and everything. And I was going to do a hike early in the morning before the guide meeting in this sort of gully that I trained in, because I lived in Idaho in Sun Valley there, and somebody else was going to go with me, and we were talking about it, and I mean, this is how I remember it, but you were very brave and you asked if you could come too.
You did?
And you did. And yeah, and I remember because I was like, okay, what size shoe do you have? And we have the same size shoe. And so I had boots for you that you could wear, because you didn't come there planning to, like, essentially mimic mountaineering up this hillside. And you came with me and this other person. You remember this?
I have no memory of this at all.
Okay, well then this is even better, because I felt a sense of extreme bravery on your behalf. I knew that you weren't comfortable asking to join in this activity that you really had like never done. We were going to be, we had crampons on, we were going up this snowy slope. It was going to be, physical. I think you were like finding yourself in your health and wellness post having a baby, and like finding your life there. And I could just tell that it was like really at the very edge, if not just past what you were comfortable doing. And you did it, and you came out there, and it wasn't like a all day adventure or anything. It was just like an hour before we went to the meeting. And my deepest desire was to reward your bravery by making you feel safe in that environment and making you feel included and like you belonged there, because you were just there to have an experience that would then open this door to let's climb Mount Rainier this summer, which we then did that next summer. And so I took it really seriously. And, your bravery and your courage were what caused me to like prioritize your safety, but that's the ethic that I guide with. And so I think, I have this always underlying current in my mind of like danger, discomfort, safety is the most important thing. And safety means something different for everybody. Safety is not always preventing you from standing under rockfall. Safety is sometimes making you feel like you belong, and so that is like a core part of my ethic. And I think maybe part of why you felt that or feel that in my guiding is because I wanted that so badly in your first experience, because I knew that it would change. It's not, I like to think I'm like all powerful, but I did feel all powerful in that moment, because I knew I could just destroy your desire to ever do something like this again if it wasn't a positive experience. And it was already like, that's the other thing I think about, like, I just discomfort seems to be the thing right now, but that's the thing about like playing with discomfort, is that there has to be a balance, right? There has to be a reward. There has to be a feeling of overcoming, and that the discomfort was worth it. Otherwise, you just get beaten down further until you're like a small skeleton of who you once were. And that's not evolution, right? So it's like just that. And I guess that's how I would describe the difference of danger. Danger is where you lose the reward of the discomfort. There's no longer a reward. You pushed too far, whether that's actually or emotionally or whatever. So I appreciate your feeling about that importance, but I want you to know that that's sort of where it's birthed from. And now I'm like devastated that you don't remember that.
But what a gift to have that reflected back though. Like, yes, I don't know why I've lost that memory, probably post birth and lots of other things, but how beautiful.
I thought it was like transformative moment of your life, and you were like, I'm going to climb big mountains.
Well, clearly it was, because then we did.
Yeah, it's true.
and actually, I think that was one moment among many in meeting you and some others also that I got acquainted with, starting around that time, that really, blew my mind wide open about what life could be, because very much was in this, life prescription of go to college, meet someone, get married, get a job, have kids, sit around Thanksgiving tables for like 50 years and then die, is like the life prescription. And it never quite resonated, but there didn't seem to be anything else. And I never really knew anyone that was outside of that prescription really. And then exposure to you and others in that time, and clearly that hour-long transformative experience, climbing, other adventures that we had, all the things, and just knowing each other as people, that really helped me start to realize that, oh, I could actually, this life can be anything that we want it to be. And we have the ability in many senses to rewrite that life prescription. And I know that that is something that you have done, to your point earlier about change, over and over and over again. So, you know, it's not easy, but I would love to hear like maybe about an instance in your life where your mind was blown open and you were able to then say, ooh, you know, maybe what I've chosen, I'm going to choose something else. I don't have to actually do that, or whatever it is.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. So I think part of it's like a foreign language in some ways to hear you talk about this life prescription that is very familiar, because it's a construct in American society that I'm like very familiar with, of you grow up, you go to college, you get the, you know, all the things you just said. But that was never shown to me in my own youth. I grew up in a family where my parents were married. I had an older sister, and we were economically relatively poor, but it was sort of by choice, if that makes sense. Like my parents could have worked higher paying jobs, and they chose not to for whatever reasons they chose that. But I think one of the main reasons was that my dad had this really high value on like happiness of the soul. And he used to say how he hated going and meeting new people, because anytime you met somebody new, you know, the first question within 3 would be, what do you do? And he would always want to counter that question with, what makes you truly happy? Because what you do isn't necessarily what makes you truly happy, especially for most people. And so I grew up in this like family where I was shown repeatedly that happiness was a high value, and that societal norms were unimportant, and that there was no structure in place of a reward of like, if you go to college, we will be so proud of you. Like, my parents could have cared less if I went to college. And so that was like a weird feeling in a way, to have no prescription. So in a way, I started out my existence not with a prescription that I had to change, but with a no prescription, which can be really unanchoring. And for me, what that led to was a series of years from the time that I was about 16, when I left my parents' home, in distress that relationship was in distress. I was fleeing for my own survival, truly. As a teen, I really struggled with some incredibly hard times and some incredibly hard social things that were going on for me as a teenager, and just bigger sort of life traumas that were coming home to roost at that really young age. And I left for my safety, and I then spent the time between 6 and 21 trying on different versions of who I could be. And I fully tried them on all the way. And a lot of it was like faking it and being some fluffing up my feathers and acting a part that I wasn't fully. I mean, it's like the opposite of imposter syndrome, if that's a thing. It's like, no, I fully am. I am this thing. Like, if I wanted a job in somewhere, I would come and like speak the experience as though I had all the experience, and I was like, I'll learn it all later, I'll figure it out. And not necessarily like, not all overtly lying, but definitely some lying to try on different versions. And I mean, I worked in like a corporate environment. I was in college as a college student. I worked managing a health club. I was like writing copy for a big giant corporation. And then I slowly started to like peel back all of these jackets that weren't mine, you know, that were not for me, and take them off, and started to like get to this underbelly of like, who are you in there? Who is the person under all these layers that I might want to be in this moment? And I finally sort of ended up getting to a place where I was with nature and alone, and in the mountains was where that occurred for me. And I felt really, really safe to challenge myself, to be imperfect, and to grow. And it was like seeing yourself for the first time. You know, it was like just knowing like, this is who I am, and it's going to be I'm going to have to figure out how to make this my life. But you know, instead of like changing the prescription, I think I wrote like 100 prescriptions, tried them all on, was like no, and then got back down to this thing. And it's funny because, you know, ultimately it goes back to that values, and that value, which is really abstract, and I hesitate to even say it, but with my dad, of like happiness, you value happiness. And soul-filling happiness. And you can't teach that to somebody. I mean, that's like a very annoying piece of advice, like
Yes.
super annoying. It's like, do what makes your soul happy. Okay, thanks. Like really helpful. But I did. I was like keeping my eyes open for that feeling of home, and that feeling of home being like within your own self. So I don't know. That's a lot.
No, I love that. I love what you said too about now I'm going to have to figure out how to make this my life, because I think that, you know, the first piece is so big, whether you're trying on lots of jackets or you're taking them off or somewhere in between. Then comes the stage of the integration of that and how you then proceed through your life as whatever it is that you have chosen. So I'm wondering if you have anything that's worked for you with that integration and that carry forward.
Well, so I think maybe something that's helpful is like the idea of when you fall in love with somebody, and how in that time of falling in love with somebody, you will do so much. You will be really willingly uncomfortable to make that work and to meet them on a level. You know, you will extend yourself to great lengths that, you know, you later will not. And that's one of those like really fun, I think, chemical brain things about being in love, is that you're just like, and also with children, right? Like having children is similar. You're in love in the same way. You'll do things that you just like would never otherwise do. And I think about if you can access the memories, the really sensory memories. So like thinking about like the way that it smelled in the space that you were in when you were doing that thing for love that you would have never otherwise done. If you could feel like how your tongue sat inside of your mouth when you were with that person, and how your, you know, you held your body in space. And if you can like kind of recenter yourself into all of those feelings, and then apply that to yourself, you know, and I think that that's how you go home. That's how you live in yourself, is to, and it's like the clicheist thing, or, you know, a really, again, challenging concept of like, it's not really asking you to fall in love with yourself. It's just like asking you to be willing to take a risk on yourself. And when I was in the mountains for the first time, really, and all of the things that had challenged me the most and all of the things that had not felt right were not there. And I was there, and it was like the world was there, and it was so open. And I had that feeling of like, I'm going to fall in love with not nature, not climbing, with me in this space. And I'm going to take care of it. And I'm going to do things I wouldn't do in any other circumstance to make it thrive and live. And like, I think that is for me how I was able to make that a life. And then like a relationship and like falling in love, it's damn hard, right? You know, then you just go about, you know, you fall out of the honeymoon phase of a new thing. And that was true for me with my journey with climbing, right? Like I had to be really poor and work just horrible jobs to be able to make it work. And I had to do, you know, just really treacherous physical labor that was incredibly not rewarding. Like there was no pretty summit photos. There was a lot of like shoveling snow to the toilet at Camp Muir on Rainier, and like being the lowest guide on the totem pole. And me as a person who likes to be a leader, it's like not great to make me like the third assistant. But every time I was like in those discomforts, I was like, I'm in love with this person who I'm going to be, because I'm growing there. You know, I'm growing every time I'm uncomfortable. Every time I'm sitting in this, I'm growing into this person that is going to be able to do all the things and do anything. And I think that has just been like, that's how I feel now. You know, I'm not done with my journey with it. It's like, I still feel that way. I'm like, there's so many things that, because I cultivated that really tender but resilient relationship with my passion, I can keep doing it. I can keep feeding it. And I have so many tools to keep it alive and keep it growing on its worst days and its best days.
It's like what the advice that you get when you go through a breakup, to stay with the love analogy, you know, all the love that you would give to someone else, give it to yourself instead. That's where the love goes. Why don't we do that on a daily basis with ourselves? You know, because we're so willing to give all of that and take all those risks and do all those things for other people. I love what you said about turning that back on yourself.
Well, and I think it's connected to what we were talking about before about being in your power, and it's the idea that somehow you're, and I think especially if you look at the sort of feminine wound, and that can be, men and women have that, but the wound of the vulnerability is weakness. Vulnerability is the feminine trait is unreliable, and it's not how you achieve, it's not how you get things. And I think that that's really reinforced in our society, American society especially. And so I think being able to look at that differently and to be a little bit in your power and realize that, 1,000%, everything that I have gone through, the biggest thing that I have learned, which is not the lesson that I ever thought I was going to learn, but it's that, the greatest strength comes from vulnerability. And it doesn't, if you don't ask for what you need, if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't be courageous, you don't get the rewards of it. And I think that that's why don't we love ourselves? Because we're not courageous, because we're taught that it's dangerous to be courageous, that you could be crushed, that you could be seen as weak and needy, and all these qualities that we view as unattractive and undesirable in ourselves. But I think if we can sit in our power and think of vulnerability as power, because it's true. And I think we're at this really beautiful time in life where people sharing their real selves, if it gives you permission to share your real self too. Like the cultivated, curated, perfect thing, that is some people, that is their real self, and bless them and their boring lives. But everybody else, I feel the beauty comes from being real and being human and being flawed and making mistakes, having mistakes made to you, and just the melting pot that is your soul then within that. So I think those are the important things, is sitting in our power to be able to ask for what we need, and so that when we get what we need, we fill that pot up, and it cultivates and grows the person that we are authentically meant to be, and we feel safe to do that.
That is a beautiful way to sum everything up. And we can start a campaign on embracing the messy, and then just spreading our messy selves all over the place, because that is definitely where the power is.
Yeah, the real, I really think if you if you had to introduce yourself with, not your credential that was most honorable, but your absolutely most hidden horrible trait that you really hoped nobody ever found out, what a safe room that would be. I would really love to be in that room and then get to know those people. I also, that gives me deep core anxiety right now, because I'm oh my God, what is that thing for me? I don't want everyone to know that. I want everyone to think I'm amazing and strong and tough and resilient and all these other things. But it's what a liberating existence. And I think that's something, maybe that's something we can all do in our daily lives, is take down one wall at a time, in one relationship, here and there. Just be more of who you are, and just realize you're not doing it for you're doing it for everyone else, so that they can have permission to be more of who they are. And if we can all be more of who we are, what a much more colorful and rich existence can we have.
Amen to that. Thank you.
Thank
you for being here today. Thank you for reflecting that memory back to me. Tell people where they can find you before we sign off.
Yeah, now I'm afraid. Am I remembering it wrong?
I will never know.
So yeah, you can always. I like it. I think what the important takeaway from that is that you remember, or that because maybe you don't know this, is that when you close your eyes and you think of somebody in your life, and you have a placeholder memory of them, for a really long time, my placeholder memory of you was this really courageous, brave moment of asking if you could join. And so that's sort of your placeholder, is as this really great, courageous person. So thanks for being so brave.
Thank you for that. My placeholder memory for you, and it has been forever, is the look on your face on Rainier when we were about to get to the summit, but we didn't know it, and you turned and smiled, and now I am crying. And I remember thinking, oh my God, we did this. This is insane. And it felt like the biggest accomplishment ever. And so that face is what I think of when I think of you.
Well, that is so nice. I probably had like a snot sickle on my face. So
It was giant and green. My favorite.
so if you want to find yeah, probably. So if you want to find me, you can check on the social media. Everything's under Melissa Arnot. It's Arnot, and my website's melissaarnot.com. And I'm going to be guiding mountains and cultivating experiences this summer and sharing those stories and trying to be more vulnerable and more honest in the ways that I show up in the world. So it's an honor to be able to practice that here with you.
Aww, yay. Well, everybody go find Melissa, see about an experience. It is one of the most rewarding things you'll ever do. So thank you.